The Nebraska Department of Motor Vehicles has emerged as the decisive choke point where temporary federal immigration status is converted into permanent-looking, everyday American legitimacy. A lawful non-citizen, or parolee, who possesses nothing more than a federal Form I-94, I-766 work permit, or I-797 parole letter can walk out of a Nebraska DMV office with a state-issued driver's license or identification card that is visually indistinguishable from one held by a lifelong citizen. That single transaction marks the narrowest and most consequential bottleneck in the entire immigration pipeline. Before the state credential, the individual's federal paperwork grants almost no practical freedom. A Form I-94 is rarely accepted by banks, landlords, employers, or airlines. It does not permit legal driving. It cannot open a checking account or rent an apartment in one's own name. The moment the plastic Nebraska card is issued, however, the same person can drive anywhere in the United States, board domestic flights on a real ID-compliant card, serve as LISB documentation for I-9 employment verification, and function as primary photographic identification for nearly every private and public transaction. Nebraska requires 2 proofs of residential address from every applicant, citizen and non-citizen alike. New arrivals without utility bills or leases routinely satisfy this requirement through shelter letters, NGO affidavits, or resettlement agency housing agreements. Catholic charities, Lutheran Family Services, and similar organizations routinely provide notarized documentation that the DMV accepts as one of the 2 required address proofs. The second proof is often a piece of mail addressed to the shelter or a welcome letter from the agency itself. This process allows individuals who stepped off a bus the previous day to obtain a credential within 24 to 48 hours of arrival. Social Security numbers are issued to most parolees and other work-authorized non-citizens within weeks of entry. The number exists solely to collect payroll taxes. It does not confer eligibility for Social Security retirement, disability, or survivor benefits unless the individual later becomes a citizen or permanent resident. Tens of billions of dollars flow into the Social Security Trust Fund annually from non-citizens who will never collect a dime. The DMV records every applicant's immigration status internally for verification and expiration tracking, yet no separate registry of non-citizens is compiled or shared. The data exists in the driver database but is not flagged, listed, or reported as a master roster of parolees, asylees, or refugees. The state could query its own records to produce such a list if it chose, but current law and administrative policy do not require or create one. Nebraska retains full authority to reject any or all federal parole documents tomorrow. The legislature could amend NRS 60 to 484.04 to exclude parole-based I-94s, asylum pending receipts, or any temporary status from the definition of lawful presence. The governor could direct the DMV to suspend processing for specific categories through executive order. Nothing in federal law compels Nebraska to issue a single credential to a parolee. The state's current acceptance of federal paperwork is a policy choice, not a mandate. Once issued, the credential becomes the anchor that transforms a revocable federal parole into durable, day-to-day integration. It is the point of no return where temporary humanitarian admission becomes indistinguishable from permanent residency in the eyes of employers, landlords, law enforcement, and the public. The Nebraska DMV, by design or by default, functions as the final bureaucratic gate that converts federal executive action into concrete state privilege, with no visible marker on the card itself to indicate the holder remains an alien under federal law. This bottleneck is unique because it lies entirely within state control. Federal parole authority is executive and discretionary, but the decision to honor that parole with a driver's license belongs exclusively to Nebraska. A single legislative vote or gubernatorial directive can close the gate overnight. The credential is the one document that turns a temporary visitor into a fully mobile participant in Nebraska society. Without it, the parolee is functionally immobilized in a rural state where driving is essential. With it, the parolee possesses the same daily freedom as any citizen, minus only those rights explicitly reserved to citizens by statute, voting and firearm ownership. The DMV's role as the final gate means it is also the most visible and politically accessible target for citizens seeking to influence migration outcomes. Every credential issued to a non-citizen is a transaction that occurs in a public building by state employees under state law. The legislature, the governor, and the appointed DMV director hold complete authority to alter or eliminate the practice. Nebraska citizens who demand change have a direct, state-level lever unavailable in any other area of immigration policy. The DMV is the place where federal parole meets state sovereignty, and where state sovereignty can still say no.